Your daily fix of women's mixed martial arts from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. Be in the loop, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your fix on women's MMA. We've got you covered on Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, saying Happy Thanksgiving! Hope your Thanksgiving weekend has went well. At the time of this recording right now, it is Thanksgiving time. I spent the past weekend with my family, to which I watched multiple strange combat sports fights, in the sense that, first of all, there was a UFC Fight Night event, which had Anthony Smith being bumped into the main event. Wasn't all that excited for it, but on that same night, we also had a very strange boxing card, and when I say strange, I meant we had the returning Mike Tyson, yes, the Iron Mike Tyson, coming in after 15 years of action, going to the ring, fighting against Roy Jones Jr. after 2 years of not getting any action, and both these two uncles here had a very strange, over-the-top fights. Meanwhile, in the co-main event, we had an influencer fighting against a former basketball player in Nate Robinson, and Nate Robinson was wearing New York Knicks colors, and that to me was embarrassing. It really was. So, the past weekend here was full of nothing but MMA fights I gotta go watch. But also, when I was thinking about doing today's podcast, I was thinking, you know what? There wasn't that many women's fights that were happening this past weekend. It was mostly male-dominated. So, and also there was no, female boxing fights that happened in that same card with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones and Nate Robinson. So, I decided for today's podcast, I'm going to do something a wee bit different here, in the sense that I'm going to go and do a review of, UFC 193. Now, do you know what happened at UFC 193? Well, for those of you unaware, UFC 193 took place on November 4, 2015, 1 week right before Thanksgiving. And the main event was Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm. Yes, it was that fight. It was the big head kick fight. Probably the most replayed moments, the most watched moments in UFC history. There are people, I say even MMA history. Yeah, up at this point right now, it's so strange thinking about what the landscape was for women's mixed martial arts and just overall mixed martial arts from in the past 5 years. It has changed immensely. Because note, when I discuss my friends and I bring up Ronda Rousey, they only say, I remember Ronda Rousey for getting kicked in the head, and that's about it. It's strange. I asked one of my friends, hey, what do you know about Ronda Rousey? What do you know about Ronda Rousey? And they always kept saying, oh, she's like a former UFC fighter, and she was famous, and then she got her head kicked in, and then that's about it. The legacy of Ronda Rousey, and also Holly Holm in this fight, was completely altered and changed. How we perceive both those fighters now versus who they were back then are so wild and so different that it's very interesting to go and look at this UFC event. Also, guess what happened in the co-main event? We had Joanna Jedrzejczyk defending her women's strawweight belt against Valerie, sorry if I'm saying her name wrong, Valerie Letourneau. Let's say Valerie here. But Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Ronda Rousey, they were the two and only two women's champions in the UFC at the time. It was the women's bantamweight belt and the women's strawweight belt. Now, cut to the currency right now, 5 years later, Joanna Jedrzejczyk still going strong. She's still going strong, still pulling off fight of the year performances, and she's still also really young, actually. She's in the good side of 30, and so we could see, and she ain't slowing down anytime soon. She's just having really tough matchups and tough opponents because the evolution of the women's strawweight division has really developed in a sense that it's pretty much, in my opinion, the most stacked division, the most exciting division among all of mixed martial arts. The only thing missing right now would be a women's anime division for the UFC. If that were to happen, we could have a large influx of Asian fighters coming in from one championship, coming to America. That'd be something that I would like to see. But you know what? Right now, I'll be talking about UFC 193. So this event took place in Melbourne, Australia, and I'll say this right now. I miss the crowds here. It is such a mental whiplash now. Watching NBA basketball, watching football, watching all these people are doing these pre-taped musical events now. This past Saturday, before the main event, Snoop Dogg went on and he played his sets in a crowd of nothing. It was super awkward, super weird. And so when I decided to go watch UFC 183, it's we are here at Melbourne, Australia. You hear? Mike Goldberg. We are here at Melbourne, Australia here, and this show is packed. Look at the arena. We got so many people here. Wow. And you see these giant crane shots. It's all cinematic looking. It is it's a bizarro alien world to see a time, even though this is only 5 years ago. But it's so weird to see giant crowds. And one thing I do like about the Melbourne, Australia setup, what they did in the stadium here, was that there's a tendency from the UFC, and that every single time they do a show, no matter what building, no matter what arena it looks like, even in stadiums, for the most part, they look the same. They could, Mike Goldberg or Joe Rogan or John Anik or DC or Dominic Cruz, any of them could be we are here at X. They could be at the MGM. They could be the MGM. They could be at the Honda Center. They can be at Staples Center. They can be in Madison Square Garden. You just wouldn't tell. They could be at the Barclays Center. You wouldn't tell what arena they're in because the way how the show is lit, it's lit. Okay, it's kind of like the NBA 2K games. Let me take 2K8 game or the 2K8, where the LA Lakers arena is so dim lit. And there is no way you would know if there's even a crowd past the second row. And that's how it is with the UFC. It's it is so dark that you only see maybe the cornermen, camera crew, the fighters, and that's about it. That's really about it. And so when they went to the Melbourne, Australia show, they're okay, it's a gigantic crowd, and you can see the people, and they do a whole lot of crane shots because whoever is the tech director there, he is very proud, or she is very proud of doing the crane shots for the show. And so watching this, I'm wow, oh my gosh, this is so cool. A giant crowd, giant arena. The presentation is great here. And also, I think this might be the first ever, it might be the very few shows out there, to which the main events and the co-main events, they're both headlined by a women's champion. Nowadays, that's not happening. I still don't think that's happened actually, where we've had two women's championship bouts be the co-main event and the main event. Because usually how things are right now going for the UFC, the way how they book and how they format their shows, it's usually one women's champion and then the other women's champion will compete in some other card, which is so strange because we have 4 belts. We have 4 women's belts. We have twice as many women's belts, not champions, because Amanda Nunes is considered the double champion. So even then, even the fact that we doubled in terms of divisions, in terms of increasing the size of our roster by double, more than double actually, considering the Dana White Contender Series, and we're getting more fighters coming in from Invicta FC, and Dana White trying to look forward to making an adamant division. It's pretty much inflated right now. It's too big. There are too many fighters right now in mixed martial arts. Actually, there are a lot of female fighters, especially in the flight division, who are just prospects, and if they just get 1 or 2 more wins, they can be amongst the top 10, but they gotta be given the opportunity, but they can't get an opportunity because there are a lot of fighters amongst the top 10 of both the flyweight division and the strawweight division that's clogging things up right now, and there's a lot of journeyman fighters there. But whatever, it's just really funny to me that there's still, up to this point, I don't think there's been a UFC card that had the 2 main big fights be women's championship fights. Has there been a card where Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes have shared the same card and they're defending their belts respectively? I don't think so. I really don't. And I'm just really shocked by that then. But let me go here and discuss the co-main event here. And so we got Joanna Jedrzejczyk against Valerie, I can't really say her name properly, Valerie Letourneau. And so, Valerie told me here... Okay, so let me give you some context of what was happening in the women's division at the times here. And I gotta set the ground here at the time of what was going on 5 years ago. Because not that many fighters... It's just... A lot of things has changed in the past 5 years in terms of perspective here. And if you go down and look at the old 2014, 2015, and 2016, like 2014 to 2016, when you look at old forums and you look at like people discussing mixed martial arts, there was a lot of negativity to women's mixed martial arts here. Because although we all love Joanna Jedrzejczyk, she is considered an all-time great, alright? No doubt, guaranteed, future Hall of Famer, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, Ronda Rousey, future Hall of Famer here, Holly Holm, and all-time great here, Valerie, a respectable journeyman. We got 4 highly touted fighters here representing the women. And at the time here 5 years ago, there was no way anybody would have predicted how dominant of a champion Joanna Jedrzejczyk would be. Nobody would have predicted the knockout from Ronda Rousey. Nobody even would have predicted how quick things turned bad for Holly Holm after the knockouts. And Valerie fought 2 more times in the UFC and ended up leaving. I'm just bringing to add in the context that during this period here, this was a very ballsy, brave move that the UFC did, being able to put on these 2 fights in a huge, gigantic arena here. No, and like, it's seriously, and when you look at the other fighters on this card here, we had Antonio Silva versus Mark Hunt, and those 2 had a fight of their candidates back in 2013. One of the best fights I've ever seen. We have Uriah Hall, who was expected to be the next Anderson Silva, highlight reel fighter. He's pretty much everything the UFC wants. A super exciting, super athletic fighter, fun to watch, and he ended up fighting against Robert Whittaker, who ends up becoming a future middleweight champion. And we had Stefan Struve, who the company was super high on, fighting against Jared Rashult. So there is reasons as to why these, like, it's still puzzling, because like, if this were to happen like in 2012, these women would definitely be like not in the main event. So it's very puzzling here. But now that we know that, though, Joanna Jedrzejczyk here, being the young chipper she is, and it's also right because it's so weird because Joanna Jedrzejczyk comes across like super humble. She's like super humble, and she's like very soft spoken. She's not saying the lines that we mostly know her for, because nowadays when we see Joanna Jedrzejczyk, she's like, the queen is here, I'm the baddest, MFer here, I'm the queen of the women's divisions, I am the one who everyone should be. Like, Joanna Jedrzejczyk went from like super quiet, and there was a period of time just also after this, where Joanna Jedrzejczyk was like super bubbly, super fun, always smiling all the time, to now like trash talker who doesn't accept fights that she loses, and she's like going through like mental issues right now because after her loss against Wally Zhang, and then she's like doing like a lot of like very like a lot of Instagram posts where she's like putting herself out there a lot more, and it's so different from the Joanna Jedrzejczyk from here. Very, very different in terms of presentation, because Joanna was presented here as a cold, quiet, silent killer in this card here. It was like, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, one of the most technically proficient fighters out there. She knows what to do, and she's going to mess you up. And then she's fighting against Valerie Letourneau here, who is a proper journeyman here, who's got the background, who's got the experience to go defeat somebody as Joanna Jedrzejczyk. She's got more overall fight experience than her. We had, other than Ronda Rousey, nobody here truly is a star in the women's divisions here. And to give you context of the current state of the women's strawweight division, it's understandable as to why there was a lot of resentment from 2014 and 2016 with people looking at the women's divisions, because the first strawweight champion for the women was Carla Esparza, and Carla Esparza fought a very unentertaining, a style that wasn't really entertaining, and then she ended up immediately losing the belt, and she came in from the Ultimate Fighter. And you had Ronda Rousey, who pretty much came in as a champion already. Like first night, champion, alright? Ronda Rousey never had to like work her way up into being champion, so people, as a hardcore members of the people of the hardcore MMA community, really were disconnected with Ronda Rousey, and that growing resentment even got worse, especially after her loss to Holly Holm. And people really didn't know that much about Joanna Jedrzejczyk. People didn't know much about Valerie Letourneau here. But I'll say this right now. Those two had probably the fight of the night, in my opinion. I think Joanna Jedrzejczyk had a really an amazing start performance here against Valerie. And although she ended up winning the fight by unanimous decision, it was definitely a back and forth fight here, to which it wasn't like Joanna Jedrzejczyk was dominating her opponent. It was more so that Joanna Jedrzejczyk did just enough to go win each round against Valerie. And so coming up after a short commercial break here, I'll further discuss UFC 193, including the kick heard all around the world, Ronda Rousey vs. Holly Holm. Come back after a short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info. Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back! Happy Thanksgiving again. You listen to the GSMC MMA podcast. I'm discussing UFC 193. It took place 1 week right before Thanksgiving, 5 years ago. Today's episode, I looked at the landscape of the UFC, and specifically in women's mixed martial arts. And I just talked about how Joanna Jedrzejczyk defeated Valerie Letourneau. I can't say his name correctly. Yikes! But Joanna Jedrzejczyk defeated Valerie here. And when you look at Joanna Jedrzejczyk's career, I saw a random post about this. Like, it was an article. I think it was actually on ESPN also. So, the article took place early 2019 to end of 2018 when they were discussing who were the best women's mixed martial arts fighters of the past decade. And in that list, they had Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey. But they did not mention Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And as a frame of reference here, let's look here. Ronda Rousey, I'll ask you right now. How long was Ronda Rousey champion in the UFC? I'm starting now. How long was Ronda Rousey the champion in the UFC? Alright then, so Ronda Rousey was, during her time in the UFC, she was champion in the UFC for 2 years. 2 years. She made her debut fighting against Liz Camucci. In her debut, she came in as the UFC champion, UFC Women's Bantamweight champion, in her debut. And then she lost to Holly Holm on November 15 of 2015, but she debuted back in February 13 of 2013. So about 2.5 months. I mean, 2 years and 2 months. So yeah, so she was only there for 2 years. Now, let's compare that to Joanna Jedrzejczyk. How long was her time frame for being champion? The answer is also 2 years. But then let's look beyond here. What did Joanna Jedrzejczyk do post-championship run? Well, she ended up having a stellar performance against Rose Namajunas, completely smoked Tecia Torres, had a dream fight against Valentina Shevchenko. She defeated Michelle Waterson, who is one of the most underrated fighters out there, and she had a fight of the year candidate against Weili Zhang. Yes, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, she is 2-4 in her past 6 fights, but her performances are so high level and so darn good that even in losses you can be like, okay, nah, these performances are championship worthy. she can go and continue on fighting against Rose Namajunas, Weili Zhang, Jessica Andrade, and any of the young prospects come in the strawweight division. And here's the note. If Dana White does pull the trigger and he does try to go and create a women's atomweight division, something that me and many people have been clamoring for years, then Joanna Jedrzejczyk, she's actually really big for her own division. She's way bigger than the strawweights. Anytime she fights anyone, she's always like bigger than her opposing opponents. It's only very rarely that Joanna Jedrzejczyk ends up fighting against somebody who is at flyweights. I think Valentina Shevchenko was the only actual flyweight that Joanna fought. And then Valentina was pretty darn big compared to Joanna. So if Joanna were to compete at the atomweight division, she can go and have another title run. She really can. And also, I'm telling you right now, if Rose Namajunas or Weili Zhang were to be injured before their scheduled bouts, because that's going to be the next big major women's title bouts for the women's strawweight division, if one of them pulls out and becomes injured, then guess what? Joanna Jedrzejczyk is going to come back in there, and we'll have probably another stellar title fight. So we have Joanna Jedrzejczyk here and Ronda Rousey. It pretty much is like I talked about this in the other podcast, where you have to compare them similar to how you compare Kamaru Usman and Khabib Nurmagomedov with Conor McGregor and Chuck Liddell. Alright then. So, who are the bigger stars in mixed martial arts? Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor. And then we have, the fighters with a whole lot of accolades within the organization, but never really branched out there and became bigger stars, or big megastars. The Demetrius Johnsons of the world, the Davison Figueiredos out there. Carlos Esparza never had any aspirations. Valentina Shevchenko. Valentina's almost getting there. Khabib. Daniel Cormier. Stipe Miocic. These are all great fighters, but they're not superstars here. And one thing to note, though, you absolutely do not have to be the best fighter in the world to become a superstar. You really don't. You're kind of gaming the system. Like, that's what Colby Covington attempted to do when he was trying to go for the welterweight belt. What he was trying to do. But for the most part here, you don't actually have to be a person with a whole lot of accolades within their run in mixed martial arts to be considered an all-time greats. Because, I'll tell you right now here, if Kamaru Usman were to go on... I'll just use Demetrius Johnson here. Demetrius Johnson has defended his belt more than anybody else in UFC history. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, she has defended her belt more times than Conor McGregor. And you know how many times Conor McGregor has defended his belts? 0. But when you look back on it, like 10, 20 years from now, you'd be like, Conor McGregor, all-time great. People would put Conor McGregor in the higher list than Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And so, I found it super disrespectful in the article that I found from ESPN, in that, for some strange reason, Joanna Jedrzejczyk is placed like in a far below level than Chris Cyborg, then Amanda Nunes, then Ronda Rousey. Even though Joanna Jedrzejczyk, among all those women, has probably done the very most in the women's divisions in the past 5 years, accumulatively, in total. That's not me taking away anything from Amanda Nunes, her dominant double champion run. Not to take away how Chris Cyborg has transcended herself to the point where she was known to millions out there, despite not competing for the UFC. I understand the importance of Ronda Rousey becoming this huge, major celebrity who was able to bring in ISIS product here. But you also have to go respect fighters like Joanna Jedrzejczyk, fighters like Demetrius Johnson, fighters like Davison Figueiredo, like the Dominic Cruz out there, who, although never became the big box office draw, went out there and performed at the very highest level and are perfect representations of what we truly love in the pure aspect of mixed martial arts. Speaking of mixed martial arts here, of the pureness of mixed martial arts here, let me discuss Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. Y'all know what the ending of this fight was. The head kick. But what's very astounding to me about this fight, though, is the fact that many people will say, hey, What do you know about Ronda Rousey? Oh, I know Ronda Rousey got her head kicked in. She got knocked out by a kick. Alright then. But I can guarantee you, almost all of them, will not be able to tell you the name of the woman who head kicked Ronda Rousey. And as a task right now, as homework, I want you to go out, ask your family members or friends, hey, who's Ronda Rousey? Or what do you know Ronda Rousey for? Tell me one Ronda Rousey moment. Almost all of them, are very likely to say, oh, I remember Ronda Rousey was a former MMA fighter, and she got her head kicked, and that's about it. Almost none of them are going to go say, Holly Holm was the girl that kicked Ronda Rousey's head. That ain't happening here. And I go with a real good assessment here, in the sense that it was very confusing as to how the UFC tried booking women, or how they tried to place women in a certain light after that head kick knockout by Ronda Rousey. And it was very evident, very evident, in the Amanda Nunes versus Ronda Rousey fight here. Like, all the promotion, all the advertising had nothing to do with Amanda Nunes, despite the fact that she was a dominant champion. The focus was on, oh yeah, this is the return of Ronda Rousey. But nobody said, oh snap, can Ronda Rousey defeat Amanda Nunes? And there was a whole lot of hype about it. If you followed, the video clips being shown out there of Ronda Rousey's training camp, where she's all jacked, she's giving the Ronda Rousey face that people nowadays are making fun of. If you try to buy, because Ronda Rousey ended up becoming a pro wrestler for the WWE, you can go out there, you can buy a Ronda Rousey action figure, and it's super hilarious because they gave her the Ronda Rousey face, and it looks very weird. It looks like the Nightman. No, she looks like Rob McKelly. No, it's not. Okay, whatever. Ronald McDonald from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, when he became the Nightman. It's super cartoony, super goofy, super weird looking, kind of cringy if you're an MMA fan. But Ronda Rousey, it's hard to look at her career right now without there being some asterisk to it, though. And what I mean by that is that, once again, providing the context here, a lot of people from 2014, 2016 did not like women's MMA during the time period here because they felt like it was very forced. That they're like, hey, Ronda Rousey is the very best. Look, everybody's saying that Ronda Rousey can defeat Mike Tyson, can defeat Cain Velasquez, yes, can defeat Cain Velasquez, can defeat Floyd Mayweather. I'm not saying that can't happen. All I'm saying that's very unlikely of happening. So, with all this huge hype coming into Ronda Rousey here, it's super puzzling to go and look at Holly Holm and be like, okay, you got Holly Holm here, looks like all-American woman, good Christian girl, flashy fighter, fun fighting style. She ended up knocking out the baddest woman on earth at the time. And it was very puzzling as to, there was no advertising, no commercials going out there. There was more headlines going in of Ronda Rousey being in this, sad vegetative state, more so than, oh man, is Holly Holm the next big thing? It didn't happen like that. It didn't. So Holly Holm, after this card here, she ended up fighting against Miesha Tate, and there was so much momentum carrying over for Holly Holm that and it was expected she'd go defeat Miesha Tate, who was the favorite, who was the rival of Ronda Rousey at the time. Yeah, even my sister was watching, and she's like, oh man, I don't want to see Holly Holm because she knocked out Ronda Rousey, and I don't want to see Miesha Tate because she's the rival of Ronda Rousey. So it became a weird dilemma where you have these two female fighters here who are not promoted all that well, who are seen negatively from the casual audience, and the hardcore audience can't really be on board for women's mixed martial arts because they've been so, these over time became overly cynical from the promotion, from the advertising, from the forcedness of Ronda Rousey being so awesome. Meanwhile, because of Ronda Rousey being pushed so hard as the super great, awesome, fighter here, it leads to fighters like Joanna and Amanda Nunes slowly having to make a name for themselves when they really shouldn't be because they're that darn good of fighters. So Holly Holm ended up losing to Miesha Tate, and from that moment there, Holly Holm's career starts to go a little bit up and down. I think Holm with her victory over Irene Aldana, she's placed in a really good position where she's maybe 1 or 2 fights away from getting title fights. And Holly Holm plans to retire as champion. That's her main goal right now. And it's a very strange thinking about Holly Holm where she was 5 years ago versus now. Because Holly Holm, when she defeated Ronda Rousey, she was 34 years old. Yeah. So I think that's one reason why the UFC didn't want to push her, was because she was 34 years old. And she, and in hindsight, we know this now, she never developed that all-around MMA game that Amanda Nunes has pretty much perfected at this point, really. And also with Valerie Jedrzejczyk, in that you got these two women here who came in as like boxers or kickboxers, and then they made the transition to becoming grapplers because they know they can go take advantage of another fighter's weakness if their weakness is in the grappling, but they also know they have confidence in themselves that if it turns to a striking match, they can go and outbox their opponents. Valentina has been doing great on this. Amanda Nunes has been really stellar on this. I'm waiting for the development of Weili Zhang, if she can go develop that ground grappling game. And for Holly Holm, she slowly just never really developed that style to evolve over time in the past 5 years. Though, you know what? She could be the number one contender soon. She could be fighting for the title sometime next year. But even then, she will definitely not be the favorite on whoever she fights. Whether it be, a dream fight again with her and Amanda Nunes, whether it be her fighting against Valentina Shevchenko, I doubt that either of those fights will lead to a loss for the champion. Because Holly Holm, where she is right now, is kind of a gatekeeper. And it's really sad to know that she really was never pushed to become the megastar like she should have been 5 years ago. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back right after a short break here. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. And so this past weekend with the Tyson versus Ray Jones fight, we had the Anthony Smith versus Devin Clark UFC Fight Night main event. But also, what happened this past weekend? Well, we also had Ashley Evans Smith versus Norma Dumont. So, going to this fight here, I was actually pretty... So, first off, Norma Dumont was like 4.5 pounds over the weight limit, so she lost about 20% of her fight purse there. And I always say it, I've been saying it, I absolutely hate it when fighters are either in catch weight fights or fighters just don't make weight here, because I want every fight to mean something. And if a fight becomes a catch weight fight or some fighter doesn't make weight, then it doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't then. You don't move up at all in the rankings, or no one ever gets, D-ranked. And although I understand people will say that, rankings don't actually matter, well, to an extent, yes, and to an extent, no also. So, Norma Dumont, she came in 4.5 pounds overweight, which may give her an advantage in this fight. And I'll tell you right now here, Ashley Evans Smith, she looked way too tired and gassed for this fight here. No, big respect here for Norma Dumont, though. She had a really good showcase. For 3 rounds of action here, Norma Dumont was just a much superior striker in the sense that Norma Dumont will always be the one who's pressuring the heck out of Ashley Evans Smith. And every time Evans Smith tries to go for a counterpunch, at least in Norma Dumont's hitting her with a very quick left jab. So it was Norma Dumont pretty much stalking Ashley Evans Smith And Ashley Evans Smith, she's not really bobbing her head all that much. She's not fading. She's not trying to parry. She's not trying to go duck under. She's not trying to move. She's not sidestepping. She's doing anything that a lot of fighters have a tendency of doing if they're losing, especially, in that they're focused on moving purely in a vertical plane. And when that's happening, you're not sidestepping, you're not mixing things up, and you end up becoming predictable. And in this scenario here, Norma Dumont saw this. She saw that Ashley Evans Smith was only moving within a vertical plane here, which allowed Norma Dumont to freely be able to go and sidestep, to go and try to corner Ashley Evans Smith to the cage, to the corner of the cages, and it helped out Norma Dumont here. In many occasions in this fight here, we had Norma Dumont pretty much putting so much pressure on Ashley Evans Smith that Smith's back was onto the cage for an extremely long period of time. There are all 3 rounds of action here, which led to Norma Dumont beating her in the dirty boxing. So in this scenario here, we can tell, okay, so Norma Dumont is beating you through poking, through technical mid-range boxing, in the 50-50 exchanges, and in dirty boxing. So, like, what should Ashley Evans Smith do? Well, guess what here? Norma Dumont instead is one who initiates a takedown. And there were many scenarios in this fight here, and it was very evident in the second round, where Ashley Evans Smith is trying to go for, like, submission holds and, like, takedowns, and trying to like, throw Norma Dumont around here, but Norma Dumont would always be like rolling through into backpack position onto Ashley Evans Smith. And Ashley Evans Smith here, I respect her for trying. There are multiple occasions in this fight here where she would try to hold onto the arm of Norma Dumont and try to attempt like a triangle choke from bottom position. And, like, she's trying to like do something here, but she really can't pull off anything because Norma Dumont here is putting so much pressure onto her through a ground and pound action. And here's the thing. Norma Dumont, she herself isn't really all that good of a grappler. She really isn't. But Ashley Evans Smith, her jiu-jitsu game isn't that well versed enough. And she's been rocked so much, so often by Norma Dumont here that she just couldn't place herself in a good position. She got overwhelmed. To put it simple, she easily got overwhelmed by Norma here. She got overwhelmed in the striking here. She was so overwhelmed in the striking that by the time they got to the ground game, her face was all battered up. It was all beaten. If you compare the faces of Norma Dumont and Ashley Evans Smith, one person looks completely normal, and the other person's face looks all banged up within the first 4 minutes of the first round. Really good showcase for Norma Dumont there, but sadly enough, once again, she was 4.5 pounds overweight. There will be an asterisk in that fight. Sadly, whatever happens to the future of these two, hopefully things go well right now. Ashley Evans Smith right now, where she currently is, she's kind of in the same position as is it Gian Vellante? Yeah, I think it's Gian Vellante and Andrea Lee. Yeah, those two fighters. Like that weird, I'm not in a prominent position to be able to be competitive amongst the top 10, but I'm right outside to be the gatekeeper for that. That's currently where Ashley Evans Smith right now is right now, what her role is. She's 33 years old, so her overall ceiling is pretty darn low. Pretty low. But you know what? It happens. She got payday. She got a payday. She got 20% of the fight purse, 20% extra of the fight purse coming in from Norma Dumont. So she made some money. Norma won her match. Hopefully, good fortunes will go their way. And then we got another one here. We have Gino Mazzani against Rachel Ostervich. Rachel Ostervich is one of the strange fighters. I talked about this last time in one of the recent podcasts. So there was a video that popped up in my YouTube recommended feed. And in that feed, it was just like a bunch of like dudes, fighters, and girls all saying, hey, who is like the most attractive looking person in all of mixed martial arts? And the large majority of them kept saying Rachel Ostervich. And when you follow Rachel Ostervich's Instagram, it's like mind-blowing. And when I say mind-blowing, I mean in the sense of like, Rachel Ostervich has a huge following. Incredibly huge following. She has, I think, about 764 or 54,000 followers on her Instagram. And she's only 29 years old. So, Rachel Ostervich, okay, and first of all, A, she is, like, really pretty looking. I'll give you that. And then B, if, considering that she already has about 750,000 followers already at the age of 29, when she is a prelim card fighter, a low-tier fighter with a losing record, by the way. She has a losing, I think she's, like, -2 overall in her record. And then Gino Mazzani, who's just outskilled her in every facet of the game here, just completely mowing around with her takedown and wrestling ability. There was no way Rachel Ostervich would go and defeat somebody who's got the complete game like Gino Mazzani here. Because just like Ashley Evans Smith and Norma Dumont here, what did Rachel Ostervich do better than Gino Mazzani here in the fights? Not on the stand-up, definitely not on the wrestling and the grappling here. And her jiu-jitsu game isn't good enough to withstand any of Gino Mazzani's grappling wrestling. So Ostervich pretty much was like a sitting duck here and end up losing the fight in the third round via KO. I will say this though, even in loss, the fact that I know that she has a huge following, a very huge following, even to the point where I was looking up articles on the aftermath and was seeing what the interviews were and what both fighters were thinking about, there were headlines of Rachel Ostervich despite the fact that she lost over Gino Mazzani. And then it was like Rachel Ostervich was like, oh man, 2020 it sucked, but 2021 it's gonna get better. And I'm gonna say this right now, Rachel, because you got a really big following with you, I can see her go to Bellator. Actually, I recommend her to go Bellator because at least in Bellator you can get your own sponsors. You'll have a lot more freedom in what you can do. You'll be able. There are a lot of UFC fighters right now who are doing OnlyFans and are making a whole boatload of money. But this is coming in from Paige Van Zandt, where she says like she gets more opportunities outside the UFC. So, and considering where Rachel Ostervich, what her current position is right now in the UFC, pretty much being kind of a jobber. Not kind of. She is a jobber in the UFC. I don't reasonably see Rachel Ostervich staying here, especially with the Dana White Contender Series coming up right now, where we're getting young female fighters who are 25 and under coming in, and they're making big waves like Kay Hansen. Rachel Ostervich, I don't expect her to stay in the UFC for all that long, but I can easily see her be given opportunities to go fight like at PFL or at Bellator. Those are two really darn good options for Rachel Ostervich. So she is definitely in a good position for herself. Good on her for the grind game of being able to make money through alternative means. And she fulfills there's an article that went out there that 49% of people, 49% of Americans are able to make revenue through more than just one stream. So you know what, Rachel Ostervich? Go out there, be a Twitch streamer, or if you have an OnlyFans account, or if you don't have an OnlyFans account, you should go set up one right now because you'll be able to make a whole lot of money doing that over being a UFC fighter. But then again, if you want to be a UFC fighter, that's your dream, that's on you, but I can't really feel bad for Rachel Ostervich's loss here, even though I'm pretty sure the UFC is pretty high on her. And so, I'll go on to the news brief portion of the podcast here. And so, first off, we got Steve Coker here promoting Cris Cyborg, saying that she is the female Mike Tyson, and I do anything for an Amanda Nunes rematch. Because, you know what, Cris Cyborg, she really wants that rematch. It ain't happening. It really ain't. I think I saw a post-presser here where Dana White just refused to accept that Bellator is a big thing. And he's like, you know what? Why would I want to work with Bellator? What big dream fights can I do with Bellator? I mean, come on, really? Like, all their fighters there are all fighters we let off. So, no. So, yeah, I don't expect Cris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes happening anytime soon. Cris Cyborg not calling herself the GOAT. So Bellator Flyweight champion Cris Cyborg does not want to be called the best female fighter of all time. And she goes on to say, specifically it says, many women did a lot for the sport. Me, Gina Carano, Matt Nunes, who has won 2 belts. I think many women are part of this. Before me, other women were already fighting. Anna Marina, Karina Dam, Kanem Cascagrosa, all the girls who are fighting now, they are building a team. You can't name one. We're all achieving the same, which is making WMMA grow. So, here's the thing. Here's the thing with Cris Cyborg. There's at one point, if Cris Cyborg fulfilled her potential and became what a lot of people expected and wanted Cris Cyborg to be when she came to the UFC, honestly, here's the thing. Cris Cyborg came to the UFC way too late. I am upset that we never had, kind of like how we never had LeBron versus Kobe in the finals, we never had Cris Cyborg and Ronda Rousey like fight against each other. It never happened. Now, will it be the best fight of all time? 100% no. But will it be a big fight off the basis that we got two fighters here from two very completely different worlds of the world of mixed martial arts going at it? And you could probably say two of the first big female mixed martial arts fighters out there. I'd say yes. In terms of like name value and branding, it would be a stellar fight. An absolutely stellar fight to go see. Stellar fight in the sense of it would be a spectacle, but the match itself technically probably not that good. So, boxing great Claressa Shields signs with PFL to start her MMA career. Here's the weird part about it. So, Claressa Shields, yeah, she's a gold medalist. Good on her for that, but she's only 10-0 in her boxing career. And she's going to say that women's boxing isn't treated equally, and I can agree to her on that, actually. I, if not rarely, ever seen any promotion for women's boxing. She says, I feel like I've had fights in boxing that have captured the sports world. Just women's boxing isn't treated equally. The PFL gives women a chance. Okay, so Claressa Shields signed a contract to go compete for the PFL. Their season got canceled for the rest of this year, and they expect to come back in 2021. PFL gives women a chance to fight for $1 million, just like they give men a chance to fight in the league for $1 million. In boxing, there aren't those kind of opportunities for women. So, what's interesting about Claressa Shields signing for PFL is that, A, it's great for her because she gets to compete at 155. Good on her for that. And also, Claressa Shields, she's still in the process of developing that all-around MMA game, that once she gets to a higher, like, not a higher sense of competition, where you can go get that from Bellator and from UFC, and even at one, incredibly. I say it right now. So, like, UFC, Bellator, One Championship, they have the best female fighters out there in the world, and much more better than the PFL. So, it makes sense why Claressa Shields wouldn't place herself in a position where she'd go to any of those other organizations and potentially fight a wrestler, like a grappler or a jiu-jitsu specialist with PFL. And I'm pretty sure with the way how she thinks and how much she cares about her own brand, kind of like Paige Van Zandt, in that you want to pick and choose fights that you really do feel like you can go win, and considering that she without a doubt will be the best striker in PFL easily, as the best boxer, hand-to-hand combatant in PFL. But will she be the true MMA fighter she is? Well, only time can really tell. According to Claressa Shields, she did say that she did try some wrestling sparring with the PFL, like, 155-pound champion. Was it 155? I totally forgot, actually. But they got bigger. There's a lot more emphasis on the bigger weight divisions for PFL. I know that for sure, more so than the UFC, and especially way more so than One Championship. But Claressa Shields, whatever happens to her in her future, I hope things go well for her. But she's got a high ceiling. If she can develop that wrestling game, Claressa Shields would be absolutely unstoppable. And there's no way anyone on this earth can beat her. But she has to develop and train herself to be that all-around fighter. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, and come back after a short break here. I'll do a review of Invicta FC 43, the main event, Kayla Harrison vs. Courtney King. See you soon.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back, and so I'm going to wrap up the talk here, talking about Kayla Harrison vs. Courtney King, and whatever is popping up in the news brief. But I'm going to talk about Invicta FC 43 here. Kayla Harrison vs. Courtney King. Oh my goodness. Kayla Harrison is a beast. She is a monster. And so, to pretty much summarize this fight here, this is a very short fight, only lasted 2 rounds. Kayla Harrison is like, I don't know, she dominated her opponent, kind of like how Merab Dvalishvili is. So if you guys don't know Merab Dvalishvili, he's a 145, is he 145er? He's like 135, 145 pounder who currently has the record for most takedowns ever in UFC history. Most takedowns ever in a single fight in UFC history. And Kayla Harrison, she fought here at 145, and she looks huge. Kayla Harrison is A, she's jacked. B, she multiple times in this fight here, leg trip, single leg takedown, double leg takedown, goes in for a power slam. This woman is a powerful, dangerous, scary woman here. I've never seen someone just easily, at will, throw out power slams on their opponents. It's amazing. And Kayla Harrison, also, Clarissa Shields here. I know Clarissa Shields and Kayla Harrison, they actually are friends. In that Kayla Harrison was a big reason as to why Clarissa Shields chose to go and compete for PFL. I know that, and so like she's like, hey, you should go compete over there, actually, because trust me, you'll go learn there, you'll develop yourself better there. And so, wow, it's a very strong showcase of strength and power for Kayla. Now, Kayla Harrison's striking is left to be a little desired, really. She is huge, she is really strong, but she ain't all that quick. She had a tendency of moving in a vertical plane, and she had the reluctancy of being the type of fighter who can overwhelm her opponent with overbearing strength and power. That's okay that she's not the most technically sound fighter out there. Now, as time goes on, she better develop that skill. But if she chooses not to wish to develop a strong boxing skill, she can be like Khabib or Mardashvili, in that the boxing ability is only used to go support your wrestling, and that's what she did here. Whenever she only went for like maybe 2-3 punch combinations, then go straight in for clinching. Like, she did not go into this fight trying to go knock you out through her stand-up game. No way. She came to this fight trying to go, and she's going to stun you with her striking, go shoot her for a takedown, and then ground and pound you there. Now, she did attempt like an armbar submission hold in the first round when she really shouldn't have. Kind of like what Carla Esparza did in her last fight, where she was doing a good job ground and pounding, but she wanted to finish a fight, so she placed herself in a really bad position to attempt the submission hold there. Kayla Harrison was really stretching it, but you know what? She was able to win the fight in the second round. Very dominant, strong, powerful performance there by Kayla Harrison. That's from Invicta FC 43, and I expect a lot more coming from her in the future. And so let's finish up the podcast here with a quick news brief here. So it is coming in by SBNation.com. Headline being, Jessica Andrade says she doesn't like fighting Brazilians, but would face Jennifer Maia for the belt. Former strawweight champion Jessica Andrade needs a strong motivator to face a fellow Brazilian in the UFC. This is being written in by Lucas Rezende. So, the headline starts with, like many of her fellow Brazilians, former UFC strawweight champion Jessica Andrade is not a big fan of facing her own countrywoman in the octagon. In fact, during her 18-fight career in the promotion, she has only faced other Brazilian athletes twice, Larissa Pacheco and Claudia Cadella. However, Andrade is willing to make an exception for the right reward. She's going to say why we don't like to fight other Brazilians, but it's pretty cool if there's a belt on the line. Andrade told AG Fights, I'm very close to Paulina Botelho, Vima Janarova, and Amanda Ribas too. It's like I always tell them, if we're going to fight, it might as well be for the belts. I don't want to fight you in a normal fight. I think the UFC will have lots of tools to work if Jennifer wins. I could get the chance to rematch her. If Valentina wins, I'll have the chance to fight her, which is something I was not able to do before joining the UFC. There's plenty of opportunities for me. My time in this division would be a very cool part of my career. Like Andrade mentioned, fighting Maia in the UFC would also mean a chance to get even. But before both athletes joined the UFC, Maia actually landed Andrade her second ever professional loss at a time in December of 2012. Now, we do know that Jennifer Maia did end up losing to Valentina Shevchenko, but Jennifer Maia did win just one round on Valentina, and even then, Valentina Shevchenko, for 4 out of those 5 rounds, dominated the fights. So, Jessica Andrade versus Valentina Shevchenko could be the next matchup, or it could be Lauren Murphy versus Jessica Andrade, and the winner of that fight is going to go fight Valentina. So that could be a real possibility, but whatever happens. Whichever fighter signs the dotted line first will probably get it then. Probably will. So, I talked about Kay Hansen earlier in this podcast here, when I said that Kay Hansen is a proper prospect you need to look out for. And I was like, she's from Fulton, so yeah, her. So, this coming in from UFC Vegas 14, from SBNation.com. Headline being UFC Vegas 14. After living a toxic home, Kay Hansen seeks to rebuild her life and career. UFC strawweight Kay Hansen spoke about her difficult upbringing and how recent life changes will play a role in her fight in this weekend's UFC Vegas 14. Now, that fight... she ended up losing that fight, but it was a very good fight. And Kay Hansen, I think, is only 20 years old. She's only 21 years old, and she's got a whole lot to prove here, and I am surprised she even defeated Gino Frey, who was an Invicta champion coming into the UFC. But Hansen describes her childhood as unstable and filled with pressure put on by her family. She was raised by one mother alone until she was 7. Then, when she met her father for the first time, after this, her mother began working full-time while her father became a stay-at-home dad. As a young student, Kay Hansen blossomed with high grades and elite-level potential in sports, namely in softball. I grew up with a 4.3 GPA and above and had aspirations to play college softball at any Ivy League school. I started playing when I was 10. I played competitive travel softball until I was 16. My dad was very hard on me early on, and I felt like I was treated as a mini-pro athlete at age 10. That is no exaggeration. I left with my father. I found martial arts at the time, and I fell in love with it, deep into it. I dropped out of high school around the same time because I wanted to be a UFC champion. I think the biggest negative impact was during training, he would watch, and I could win 4 minutes and 40 seconds of sparring round and lose 20 seconds, and I knew I'd get chewed out of the way home. It made me fear failure and fear making mistakes, and it translated to my fighting. Ever since I removed that, I've noticed I regained a love, a passion of everything I do. Being a perfectionist is cool, but it's dangerous as well. I've been trying to find the balance. This is my career, but I also do this because I love it. Nice to hear that from her. So, I did read up earlier on, actually, that Kay Hansen was already being scouted on to go and play softball for Harvard University. And the fact that so she made this decision at 20 years old. No. She made the decision at 16, 17 years old, where she said, yes, I understand that Harvard wants me to go play for them. Alright? I have an awesome GPA, varsity member of the softball team. You know what? I'm gonna go and be a MMA fighter for some small organization and then become a UFC champion someday. By the way, she is incredibly brave. Incredibly brave for Kay Hansen to be able to do that, actually. Now, I know people in my life who've done that, who have that weird relationship with their parents. I've done with my parents, where my parents wanted me to become a doctor, and I said, no, I don't do that. I want to get into journalism. And here's the thing. I know doctors make way more money than me. I got friends, I've said this story many times, I got friends in Northern California who stuck to the path that their parents let them put them in, and they ended up being super successful, making a whole boatload of money, man. 6 figures, $350,000, $150,000, $200K, whatever. Okay, then. But I also have one friend who was making a 6-figure job, and then she ended up quitting her job so she can go and pursue a career that she really wanted to. She was accepted to a really prestigious university in computer science engineering, and then she graduated, immediately got a job, got a 6-figure salary. 2 years later, she ended up quitting, and she was like, yeah, I don't like it. I don't. Like, I got the money, good on me for getting the money, but I want to be happy right now. And in this sense here, for Kay Hansen, good on her for being able... She threw away the opportunity of going to Harvard, of playing in an Ivy League college, and then she threw it all away in order to pursue something that she loved. I love that out of Kay Hansen, and if you have not seen Kay Hansen... I forgot the name of her opponent, though, sadly enough, though. Let me look this up. But Kay Hansen, if you've missed on her, I recommend you look out for Kay Hansen. So Hansen, she is 21 years old, and she had probably the best fight of the night in that UFC Vegas 14, and it was against Courtney McKenna. And that fight there could have gone either way. It really could have. That Courtney McKenna ended up winning that fight by split decision. She didn't win the fight by split decision. And the one thing that Kay Hansen really should work on would be her ground game. Her striking ability is far, far ahead of many people at her age. Once again, she's only 21 years old. But another fighter who I got to compare her to would be a fighter who is competing in the women's fight division, and that's Maria Agapova. So both Maria Agapova and Kay Hansen, they're both like 20 and 21 years old, respectively. And they're both really darn good strikers, but they both have a tendency of being overly aggro and aggressive in their striking and not really good in their defensive movements. And also, their clinch game is very questionable, to which you just have to rely on their overwhelming power, because Kay Hansen, she used a lot of her power when she competed in the Atomweight division for Invicta. Now, her competing at strawweight, she can't really use that much power in the first place. She has to mostly use on her boxing ability, which, by the way, is really good. Her boxing is stellar. But in order for Kay Hansen and Maria Agapova to truly make the next step in their careers, in their very, very young careers as MMA fighters, they gotta develop that all-around game here. And I don't expect them to really focus or work on their jiu-jitsu and wrestling ability till like maybe 2 years down the line. But I expect big things from them in the coming years. 2-3 years down the line, if all things go well, they would be amazing fighters competing in the top 10 in their respective divisions. Especially considering there's a lot of aging fighters right now who are from like rank number 5 and 10, like from 5 through 10 in both the flyweights and the stride division. I can see both of them making big strides in 2-3 years. And so with the future of women's mixed martial arts going really well with Mackenzie Dern, Amanda Ribas, Courtney McKenna, Kay Hansen, I'm excited for the future. And looking back to women's mixed martial arts in 2015, man, it's surprising to know that during that time, there are a lot of people who are very against women's mixed martial arts. You look back at the old forums, at old posts, you will see people being like, you know what, the women's division, it feels weak, it feels top heavy. Well, guess what? Yes, it kind of is top heavy for some division. For the bantamweight division is very, very top heavy, but for the flyweight division and for the strawweight division, it has a whole lot of depth, very, very deep, especially the strawweight division. And there are a lot of fighters who, although are not have big names in the flyweight division yet, if you follow the sports and you follow all these young prospects coming in, like ranked like 10 to 15, you'll notice that there are some great fighters out there who, down the line, can be big and can do great things for the division. And that will bring us to a close for today's podcast. Once again, happy Thanksgiving! Hopefully your Thanksgiving goes well. And as we near Christmas time, hopefully your Christmas shopping, if you guys still intend to do Christmas shopping, which you should, because sharing is caring. Remember, always stay safe, be good to each other. 2020 is right about to end, and so let's end off this last month with something good and positive. Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a nice night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.